Blue Protocol has a ton of settings that you can change, from gameplay tweaks to controller modifications, even keybinds, as well as graphic settings that will completely change your frame timings and frame rate in general, and how smooth you can play the game. I'm going to go over all the fixes there and how to get everything addressed. That way you can have the best and smooth experience. What's up, World Utopia here, back into another video. Today we're checking out all things Blue Protocol. Okay, so first off here, before we go through keybinds, the key settings, all that stuff there, we got to get your game running smooth. That way you can actually have a decent experience while using these different keybinds and being able to understand how your character plays and works, etc. So first off here, I have gone to a very populated part of the map where we have a ton of players here. In fact, this isn't all of them. I'll showcase those details here in a bit. Currently, I'm getting about 110 FPS with an RTX 4070 Ti Super, but I also do have smooth motion enabled, meaning that I basically have frame gen on right now. I'll talk about how to enable that feature here in a bit, but first off, I do want to get your settings going right so that way you can have that set and ready to go, as that's what you should do before turning on frame gen, as you do want at least a base setting of around 50 to 60. Otherwise, you're really going to feel some poor latency. So before we turn on frame gen smooth motion, if you have that setting, which again is locked to 4000 series or newer, we do got to go through the graphic settings and what those are changing. Really quick here, before we jump out of the settings portion, if you haven't already downloaded and checked out Blue Protocol, it is completely free to play, and you could do so via the link in the description pinned comment, as well as the QR code on screen. I'd really appreciate if you did use that, as it does help out the channel a ton. And honestly, I'm loving this game so far. It is definitely worth the time in checking out. Now let's get onto the settings. So first off here, I've gone through these base settings, and we're going to lower everything to none. You'll see we won't really get much of a difference here, even turning off character details. But our frame rate only jumped up around 9 FPS on occasion here, sometimes around 10-ish, but nothing too crazy. So the settings overall, from what I've noticed, at least the one graphic settings, don't affect it too much. Now, of course, if you have a poor performing system, you're going to want to put it as low as possible. I still have some optimization tweaks there for you though. So if you have a quite decent system, what I would do is essentially max out nearly everything, but we're going to lower one or two settings. The first one is post-processing. This is something that you don't need anymore because we have DLSS, especially if you can enable DLSS. So if you do have DLSS enabled, or even FSR, you should not be using post-processing. It's just going to waste frame rate and frame timings with that, so I would turn that off completely. The next one here, what you could do is lower character detail. We'll go over this setting in a bit, what we're going to want to change here, but right now I'm going to keep it at maxed. I did earlier have it on high, but it didn't really affect my frame rate too much, so that could vary there depending on the next setting. The one setting that's going to change everything about your frame rate is this max players on screen. Now this has to do with your CPU actually. This is very CPU bound. In fact, I'm only using about 60% of my GPU in this scenario. Currently, I have it set to 50 players on screen. As you can see behind me, 50 players. If I change that and set it to 150, which is the max, you'll actually see a bunch of players that we were missing on the screen. There's even more than that. There's more than 50 players here. There's around 150, maybe a little bit less, of course, but I am on line 1, so I am on the full line. Currently, this line is full, or at least it was earlier, but there's a lot of players here. You see, we dropped from 120, 115 FPS all the way down to 80 FPS. We lost 40 frames per second there. And just to point out, I do have a 5600X, so that results could vary. But the players on screen will heavily tank your frame rate. If you'll see just how drastic this setting is, we're going to lower it all the way down to one player, which is literally just yourself. So if you didn't want to see anybody, as you can see here, we have no players on screen, and we're at 240 frames. So we went from 70 FPS all the way to 230, 240-ish FPS. So again, depending on if you want to play a single player game at this point, probably aren't going to want to have it at 1. I would at least set this to 20 players so that you can at least be in a raid format. You'll see it will then populate those 20 players. And we did lose around 50 FPS here, but we're still at 170, 180-ish. So not too bad there. For a good setting, I actually keep mine around 50, and I would try to experiment between 50 and 100. That's a lot of games usually have between 50 and 100 on screen. Typically with a lot of games there, you see we're around 104, 107. If I do up that to 100, you'll see we do take a little bit even more, dropping down to around that 80 mark. So realistically, there's probably around 100 players here, even 60-ish you saw there for a second. Probably around 100 players in this section. This is the most populated area that I could find. So realistically, I would keep it around 50 players, max out around that, maybe go up to 60, 70 if you can afford it. If you really have a good system, do the max if you want to. You'll probably never see more than 100-ish players anyways. Next up, of course, these are pretty default here, but if you want to use super resolution, if you have the ability to do so, I would use DLSS, of course. If not, I would go ahead and use FSR. There is some, I believe, translation issues here, It says effect settings, and it says performance, balance, and then effect. I do believe that means quality, and so I would just set it at quality. I would always recommend quality over the other two, but if you need to go to balance, of course, you can vary it there depending on how many players you want on screen. And of course, if you do have DLSS, I would recommend. Last up here, these are kind of player decisions. Of course, I would turn off motion blur. I don't think motion blur is good in literally any game, so I would always have that one off if you wanted to do so. You could also keep the character outline on. I would keep that on, as well as reflections. These two are player choice. I like lens flare and glow effect. If you don't want those, there's like the chromatic effect. I like those in games. Some people don't, so turn those off if you don't. Next up here are some other settings that will actually help a little bit here, and that is the special effects settings. These will actually help your frames in raids if you need to. Another awesome setting here, so if you're doing a lot of raid or raiding with a 20-man team, you might want to turn down the visibility of your ally skills. It can also help with some visual clutter, but effects really do hurt your frame rate overall. So I would maybe turn these down to a minimum with the ally skill effects, visibility of other effects, or enemy skill effect. Those you should always keep to normal and high, as you really don't want to be missing anything. Basically, you really can't even turn those off, which I'm glad about, but you can turn them to a minimum. I wouldn't if you can afford to do so, because you're going to want to essentially know where the enemy is targeting, and in raid, etc., you want to know where everything is at. So I would keep it at least normal to high. Now, this is for those of you that are on an RTX 4000 series or newer. That obviously does include the 5000 series, and yes, you have to be on an NVIDIA graphics card. AMD has their own solution, but I'm not going to go over that one here. This is to turn on the smooth motion. So again, if you don't do this, you can skip this section, but there is an easy way to do this. You will have to add the game manually. As you see, I do have it added. I have two here, but just ignore that for now. And you see we do have smooth motion on. So this is not going to appear no matter what you do. Probably not going to show up. It might show up if you have the Steam version, but it didn't show up for the launcher version, so I had to add it manually. Now, there's an easy way to do this. It does say add a program, and it will launch you into a section here. Now, I have this already showed up on this, but there's an easy way to actually find out where the Blue Protocol exe is. It's not this one, by the way, so just know that. What you could do, and you could do this for any game really, is open up your task manager, and then we're going to head to the top section here. What we can see is that BPSR, obviously we want to have that top running. We can highlight here on our CPU and see that it's obviously using the most. So what we can do to find this easily is actually right-click this and then head to Open File Location. Once we get to that, it will actually show you the exact exe you need. You see this one was kind of a bait here, so this is the actual one that you do need to add. And what you could do is copy this section or Control-C or right-click, and then we can head over here and then paste into here and hit Enter, and now it will take us to the section where we can click this and hit Open, and it will then designate this folder here and pop this up here. It might take a second to load, but once it does, you can then head down to Smooth Motion and turn it on. Also, a few other settings in here. Some stuff says support not tested, so it more than likely is not going to work. And a few other things here you could test and play around with, but for right now, we're just turning on Smooth Motion, so you can basically double your frame rate. Now that we have your game running smoothly, you're probably going to want to know what all the settings entail and how they kind of differ from each other. Which classes should pick different ones, because honestly there are a few things that you should probably vary it if you're melee or ranged, and even if you're a caster. So we'll look at this first section here for the battle preferences. The first one is to prioritize the camera distance, which, as it does say here, the facing direction will be considered when looking at or selecting a target and locking onto that. So essentially, if you didn't know, when you are looking at a target here, you can see it's kind of popping up the little blue arrows on these. You can actually target it with the tab key or the middle mouse button. And we can go and select through all of these different ones here. And when we're looking, now it's going to prioritize our vision. So our field of vision here is on these 4 targets. You see it's varying between them. It's not going to go to the ones until I back up here. Now, oh, actually, I got to go a little bit further, but now I can actually pull those into it because it's doing it based on our vision, right? And so if we only have these 2 in line, then it's only going to go between these 2. It's not going to go to any other target. This is the target lock key, so you see red means that it's going to lock on this one. So no matter if I'm facing this, it's still going to lock on it. If I'm facing away, still locking on that one. Whereas if I pop off of it and go to blue, as soon as I attack this one, I can actually move to this one with my with your like vision or field of view. Which the same one here, the assist target lock, is automatically locking onto targets and cycling through them. It's the same thing there. If you have that turned off entirely, you actually don't get the assist to tab and through. See, my tab key, or you can't really see, but I'm hitting tab right now and it does not work and is not locking onto any target. So it's basically kind of removing those 2 keys. If you wanted to turn that off entirely and didn't want any target locking on accident, you could turn that off as well. Next up here is the auto combo stuff. There's different settings here that you can get into with the auto combat that you can change and switch out. I believe you're taking off keys here that you wouldn't use in your combo, so when it does combo, it's going to go ahead and use those. I don't think it works very well with Mage or Frost Mage, it seems like, because especially Icicle, you really are wanting to pop Icicle on that cooldown. And if you use the auto version, it actually only does the third one. So like your Icicle at the bottom here, once you get those Icicle procs, it actually only does it on the third cast, or at least when you get the third proc of Icicle. You see, if I hit the auto cast, it actually won't cast Frost Lance until we get that third one there. So it's a little bit weird. I definitely wouldn't use auto casting or auto battle if you're a Frost Mage, unless you're going AFK. It's not going to work in most combat scenarios. Camera shake, obviously pulse shake. I like these on. You can turn these off if you're like super competitive. We kind of know what those are at this point. This next one is the skill camera movement. And the only one that I saw on Frost Mage, at least that I use, the only one that does it is the Crystal Veil. So everything else is not going to move my camera. I moved it up a little bit, but it won't move it back. Actually, you'll see with it when I have it on, it'll pull back the Crystal Veil a little bit and kind of vary it right there. Yeah, right there, moved it back slightly. But only certain abilities do it on certain classes. So you have to vary it there. Again, I'm not 100% sure on which classes do what, but in certain combat scenarios, that skill or skill assist there will kind of back up a little bit. It's not really a ton bother, so I just leave it on for right now. I don't really think it makes too much of a difference. This next one here is the free cast mode. Now this one is really just for casters, and essentially I would only use this if you really needed to. It has some weird properties about it that I don't like currently. If you'll see here, it says to hold down actually on it, but that's not how it works. The release mode is like a skill key, where the left click mode is to press a skill to show the indicator, and then you left click or press the skill to actually key in the cast ability. The problem with it is it always pops up. So you see, even if I press it quickly, it popped me into a weird thing. Now you probably didn't see it. It's this thing, right? No matter what, if I just even tap it, it's going to pop you into this screen, which I really don't like. The left click is where you can then cast it, or cast it for you. You see right now when I'm clicking left click, it's not doing anything. So that was where you can do it, or you can have it where you release the key, then it will cast. I really don't like it because no matter what, you see it quickly pop me into that. No matter what, even if I quick tap, it doesn't matter. It's going to pop you into that. It's really weird. Again, it even does it with Crystal Veil, where you can target it. I would like this if it was a hold thing, if you could hold it down and then activate it, but it activates no matter what, so I hope they either fix that or adjust that. This might work better with Marksman, but right now I really don't like it on Mage. I'm not a huge fan of it. Maybe you guys are. Maybe you want to be able to kind of showcase where you want to target something, so you can do that, and that it is decently helpful in dungeons and stacking stuff, but I don't like that it puts you into it automatically. You see how it kind of put us in there, even though I tapped the key. I'm not a huge fan of that. This last one here is to allow mouse movement outside of the window, and this is realistically, if you have two monitors, you'll see my mouse doesn't go outside of it, because I think I also have it full screen or even borderless, but my other monitor is actually on a second computer, so it's not attached. If you had a second monitor attached to your first PC or your only PC, then you probably would want this at least enabled or disabled. But right now, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me because I don't have anything tied to it. But yeah, for right now, I'm going to turn it off just in case I kind of exit out of something. But if you had a second monitor, you could probably turn that on. Next up here is just glide operations. This one is dependent on either your joystick or camera or where you're moving, and if you want to have certain controls forward and backward. This one, again, it also does apply to like where your camera is, where your camera angled, where you're going with the glide. But I like it WASD, so if you wanted to change that, you could, and have it essentially tied to your camera instead. As you see here, it goes with your camera instead of your actual WASD. I think that's more so for controllers. Sensitivity stuff, that's your own doing. You'll figure that one out on your own. And then we have some weird settings. Now, I've done a few testing with these things. They really all do the exact same thing here, where they're correcting when you're moving. So right now I have this off. You'll see I'm just running side to side. It's not doing anything. We're not correcting. This is a setting I've always turned off in every single MMO, and it is off by default, which I really like. That's super nice. A lot of MMOs, what they'll do is when you don't run straight, or when you're turning your character, it will actually start to turn your camera like that. And you'll see it right here. It does it really subtly. Even if you turn all of these settings on, you would think it would have more influence, but you see I'm slightly turning. The character's actually turning. Even the character's moving. So I really don't like this because it's hard to move side to side, because your character's actually moving alongside that. Or you'll see if I just do it normally and turn all of this off without any of the corrections, you'll see now my character is properly moving side to side along the map. There's no correction there or variance. There's target locking, where you can have your camera automatically zoom out for better distance when you are locked onto a target if you're too close. Essentially, if you go here and we turn it on when we're in combat and we are locked on, so remember, you have to be locked on. I do believe it means in the red key here. So if we're like this and then we start fighting, it's going to zoom us out. You see how it pushed us out there? If you have that turned off, it's going to let you stay with whatever FOV you want. So if you want to play like an FPS, you pretty much can, or nearly really close over the shoulder. Only moved me out there for that action skill. But yeah, it's going to stay like this. So if you really wanted that, you could turn that on. I turn it off for now. Not a big deal. Then we also have the extended max distance. I leave it on. I like this one. It really is nice in boss battles. It'll like zoom you out and pan you out for the boss battles. I like this one overall. It is very, very nice, and you can zoom out for even further. A lot of players that are hardcore PvEers usually want the extended max distance on. They turn that on in most MMOs. Obviously, the next setting here, this is just music stuff and volume stuff. If you want to fix that, that's on you. These are my current settings if you want to copy. I have my game settings for there though. Next up here is the title overhead. So this is your name and your title that'll actually appear above your head and will actually say your in-game name. I've always liked it off because I found that a bit cleaner in games when I have these off. As you see, we have nothing on there. If you have a title, I don't have a title currently, so that wouldn't show up either. But I think that it just looks a little bit cleaner with it off. Up to you. If you have a hard time finding your character, you could actually turn that on. So that's a nice one. And again, you can also do that for NPCs, etc. Quest assistance, that one's going to give you that golden line when you're going to a quest. Don't know why you would turn that off unless you really want to be immersed, so I leave that one on for now. Last up here, there are the keybinds. I don't have a ton of recommendations here. Aside from, I do need to eventually, which I haven't done, is kind of rebind your healing keys. As you see right now, they're on F2 and F3, and kind of cycling through them is a little bit odd, especially because I have an FN key. I don't have my F1 and F2 and F3 rows, so it's a little bit odd. I do need to do that one. I haven't done it yet because I haven't really needed to heal too much at the moment, but I will eventually keybind that. What I will say, what you should keybind for sure, because you're going to need it right away, unless you're okay using tilde. I don't have a tilde key, so it is a bit odd. Is actually this one here, the extra skill. You're going to get the extra skill prompt in pretty much every dungeon, every hard mode dungeon especially, and you're going to need to use that one on occasion. Sometimes you'll all need to use the ability, so I would definitely turn this on, or at least keybind this as soon as possible. I have it on my mouse button, makes it easy. I'm going to put my heal on the mouse button as well to make that easy. So instead of cycling through, using my actual item here. In fact, I'll do that now. Put it on my mouse button 3, so that'll make it super easy for me to just use my heal when I need to. As I mentioned, you'll probably want to toy around these keybinds. I'm not a controller player, so I don't know how a ton of these will matter. Maybe one other one here is the team voice chat switch. The team voice chat switch actually works kind of weird. When you're in a party, right now it currently just shows that I'm listening. If I hit left control and I, it actually mutes mutes everyone's voice, and then if I do it again, now I'm actually talking to people, so they can hear me. You see, it shows me speaking. I'm actually speaking in game. If I was in a party, they could hear me right now, and you have to hit left control and I to actually mute that again. So it is a bit odd there. If you want to change the push to talk key like that, it's kind of push to talk in a sense, more so kind of turning it to an open talk. I would do that one essentially right away as well, especially if you're in a party that likes to talk. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, you should really check out Blue Protocol. It's a super fun MMO, and it actually does respect your time. I have a link down below in the description, pinned comment, or even the QR code on screen you can use to download, and I'd really appreciate it if you did so. I also want to thank Blue Protocol and A+ themselves for sponsoring this video, and honestly, I couldn't have done it without your guys' support. Overall, that should about cover for today's video. That's pretty much every setting keybind that I could think of, trying to get your game running smooth. If you guys could think of any others, put it in the comments down below so you help other people. And if you enjoyed today's video, like, subscribe, and until the next one. Deuces.